Hello, welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Natalie Roberts and I'm here with my co-host, Heather Parks. We've both been in our neurodiverse relationships and families for more than 25 years. We met 10 years ago when we were feeling really desperate and trying to solve a lot of issues in our relationship and our families. We've been journeying since then. We've found many more positive and hopeful ways to solve, resolve, repair, reconnect in those relationships and in our families, in our lives. And we now co-host also Loving Difference online, giving hope and a way forward for neurodiverse relationships. In this podcast, though, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that actually were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. See you there.
Welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Heather Parks. I've been navigating difference in my relationship and family for 25 years, along with my husband Phil and our 4 children. For much of this time, neurodiversity was unknown and there were challenges and struggles for all of us. Since journeying to recovery, I have been passionate about helping others to flourish in their neurodiverse families. Firstly, as a family support worker and a special educational needs advocate, and now as an accredited coach. It's beautiful work supporting others to create the lives they want and deserve, and I can't wait to share some of our discoveries with you here today.
Hi, I'm Natalie Roberts. I've been in a neurodiverse relationship and family with my husband Pete for 25 years. We discovered neurodiversity was part of our story in 2014 when we were really struggling as a couple and family. Now we're thriving and enjoying life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. I'm also an accredited coach, supporting individuals and couples in neurodiverse relationships to reverse the impact of unknown neurodiversity and thrive in a relationship and a life that they dream of. And together, Heather and I host Revival Retreat, the online journey for a flourishing life in your neurodiverse relationship, with a map, tools, and all the support you need to recover and be you in your relationship and your life. You can find out more about that at lovingdifference.net.
And finally, before we dive into Bust the Next Myth, would you like us to join us live for the next podcast? We record some of our podcast episodes live in Loving Difference. So if you'd like exclusive early access and the opportunity to share your views and ask questions, join us in Loving Difference, the home of understanding, support, healing and solutions for neurodiverse relationships. Membership is free. Just head to lovingdifference.net. In this podcast series, we're busting myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey and that we've realised aren't true and that were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. And we really want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change.
So today's episode is actually a part 2. You might want to whiz back and listen to part 1. But in part 2, we're continuing to bust the myth that your partner can't meet your needs, so you'll need to leave the relationship to recover yourself and thrive. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. And we thought we'd just give you a quick recap. Absolutely, do go back and listen to part 1. But in that part, we shared that we've discovered quite a lot of reasons why our needs aren't or weren't being met in our relationship. 3 narratives in particular. We talked about the neurodiversity narrative. We talked about cultural narratives and unconscious expectations that we had. We also talked about our experience of how needs have been met in the past and the impact that may be having on our experience as well, plus lots of other contributing factors. The point is there were lots. It's not just one reason that we're experiencing what we are. So do go back and listen to part 1. And in this episode, we want to dive in a bit deeper and explore, I guess in 2 parts itself here, what even are needs, and perhaps who is responsible for meeting those needs. So let's get started. Over to you, Heather.
So it's a great question, isn't it? what even are needs? Do we even know what they are? And it's not just our needs. We also want to think about our preferences, what we can tolerate, what are our desires and wants. I mean, gosh, I mean, who knew those back then?
I don't think that's a very scary word, wanting something.
Desire.
Yeah. I mean,
we didn't think about that, did we? I mean,
No.
when we met in 2014, we had no idea really what our needs, but both of us recognize now that one of our defense modes was very much about meeting and anticipating and predicting and resolving other people's needs, but we didn't actually know what ours were, did we? I mean, what even is that? Where were we? We talk a little bit now about having a knowing needs continuum. So how well do we know our needs? How well do we accept that? And how able are we to meet those needs? So you could talk about that as really being, I have absolutely no idea at one end what my needs are, and even if I did, that would be totally selfish or something to try and meet those. And then we're right up at the other end, aren't we, about talking about honouring our needs and being really self-compassionate and taking action about that. So there's a whole story around needs as well. So we've just got this whole line of where we could be anywhere on there, and we want to help people move right up that line, don't we? And really talk about how we can meet those, either by our, own that and take responsibility for it and take responsibility for acting to meet them, either by ourselves or in conjunction with others. And we want to introduce even a concept of kind of consent and respect for other people's abilities, limits and their boundaries and their capacity and competence, interest, so
lots to dive into for sure, isn't there?
Yeah, loads. I mean, some new words here maybe for people around capacity, competence, boundaries. We can't go. I mean, yes, let's start, shall we?
Well, I think there's a question that we can begin with, Heather, and I think it's really helpful to even ask us, like ourselves, like how well do you know your own needs? How well do you know them? And how you like them to be met? I know for both of us, that was something that I think when we were asked that question, we didn't necessarily really know very clearly, certainly didn't feel very comfortable with that. I have a lot of clients who tell me very clearly that they want and they really expect their partner to meet their needs, and it's not happening. And when I ask them perhaps what specifically those needs are, they're actually not really sure. There are often not words for that, certainly not very clarity, and yet we're still expecting partners to know what they are and meet them really perfectly, and know exactly when and how and everything that changes about those. And I think that's really insightful. Often just that insight for a lot of people is really helpful, that, I don't know what my needs are, but I do think that you should know what they are. And I think we'll come later to maybe some of the reasons that we realised, certainly for us, why that had started to happen. So what do we mean by needs? I guess there's a whole thing around what do we actually mean by that. A lot of us might know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and about basic needs. But do we really know what we mean when we say my partner isn't meeting my needs, when we're all really very different people? And in our relationships, in our neurodiverse relationships, where the seesaw of difference that we've talked about in other episodes is much bigger, how different we are is much bigger. So what needs might be for one person may be very, very different for the other one. And we're assuming that we should just know, and that our partners would know, or other loved ones around us would know. So in Loving Difference, we talk about different areas of needs, and we sort of put them in little buckets, almost, as it were, of social needs, emotional needs, sensory needs, physical needs, mental needs, spiritual needs, even financial and touch needs. It's very helpful to have these levels of distinction and be talking about them with some language and have some words for all of this. And maybe you'll have some more to say on it, but we've realized that there's quite almost a nuance and a subtlety sometimes to this. There's the more granular we can get with it, the more specific we can be about what our needs are, what they look like, when we need them met. I mean, all of that, it all massively impacts our ability to meet our needs and have our needs met by others. What else would you say about that?
But it's just such a good point about the nuance and the subtlety of that, because we can have, for example, you know, for example, my partner and I, we both have social needs, but what does that actually mean, and what does that look like? Well, for us, it looks very different. You know, I have a lot of need to connect with the right people fairly often to keep my bucket quite topped up. And he'd also had that need, but it's at a lesser, you know, the interval in between needs to be a bit longer, and maybe actually that his experience of it is draining rather than life-giving, but he's getting something out of it as well. So it's not that he doesn't have social needs, it's just they look really different, isn't it? And that can be along all of those different needs, isn't it? You know, we both have emotion, we have needs in all those areas, but it can look and feel very different. And what we can begin to realize once we know our needs better, and you know, for me and you, we really had this journey of trying to work out what those
even the heck are they?
I know we'd lost ourselves in that. We're both, you know, like we say, we're both kind of in that kind of people-pleasing defense mode sort of like nature, and we've kind of forgotten to analyze our own needs around that, hadn't we?
I think it might be the other side, which is I am very clear what they are, but I'm maybe not communicating with them as well as I might be able to, or somebody's, you know, again, other reasons why somebody else might not be able to meet them. So that you can also be here with knowing what they are and still not having a great experience. So
yeah, I think it's really important at that point, isn't it? Because so we've got to understand our own needs, and then we've got to understand the other person's either boundaries around that, or the level of interest, or their capacity, or their capability of meeting that need. But also about you know, something around understanding who's responsible, or you know, even that kind of and I kind of like, I like to think of it as it's not enough to just know our needs, we also need to be able to take action, don't we? And actually you know, begin to meet those needs as well. So I guess that kind of leads us a bit into our sort of myth within the myth, our part 2 maybe.
We've found a myth inside of a myth, Heather.
Yeah, we can keep doing this. We drill down, that's what we do. We keep like taking layers off, don't we? And we keep finding more. And I think the story with this myth and what we thought this would mean and what we'd have lost if we continue to believe this is so important. And you know, the myth inside this myth that we want to highlight and bust along with this is that we really thought or had learnt that our partner would or should meet most of, or if not all, our needs. And that's just not true, is it? You know, then we need to get into what is a relationship, isn't it? And, you know, is the partner there just to meet your needs? Is that what a partner relationship's for? Is a relationship, you know, actually, could it be healthier and happier when we're clearer about our needs, preferences, tolerance, aspiration? So we need to think about that label, isn't it? Partnership. It's got a whole layer of expectation or assumptions, and we're sort of putting that on others, aren't we? And maybe we're putting that on ourselves as well, because I think I saw it as my job to know and understand and recognize and then meet my partner's needs. And I think, you know, and then that, you know, when we had children, it became my responsibility to do that for them. And then you know, it keeps going down the line, doesn't it? And you know, and actually we keep sort of shuffling ourselves down to the bottom of the pile.
So and you might also be someone who knows your needs and is really meeting all your own needs, and maybe your level of trust in others to meet your needs is challenging. You know, I think that's another one. Or if you're like that and then you have children and they have needs that you need to meet, and you know, there's a lot of other dynamics going on inside of this. I mean, we're sort of sharing our particular journeys around it, and I also recognize that for some people they might be noticing, you know, I resonate with this bit, but actually for me that bit around trust or boundaries or needs is slightly different dynamic. So if that's you, then just know this is still all for you. Just that you might be finding yourself in it slightly differently.
Definitely, we have members a lot, don't we? We see it a lot where they've become almost so self-sufficient and so sort of like assuming that they can only trust or hold, holding that so tightly that even when we're offering all the support in the world, they're finding it hard to accept it, aren't they? It's like,
well, some people might have journeyed further with knowing their needs and meeting their needs because of other things they've read or learned, or maybe some of this myth that they've been believing, and then are living really quite separately or doing a lot of their own things, and meeting, needs are met. And now then you question, well, what's the point of the relationship then? So that is another junction I think a lot of people get to, where actually there's some new insights and some new thoughts to have around that. Yeah.
So I think knowing and
we discover then
all of that, isn't it? It's so important, isn't it? So knowing and understanding our own needs, exploring how we can meet them, who's the best people to meet them, how we can help with our partners, what that looks like in a relationship. And of course we're all so different, so the more we get to know our needs, the more we benefit from getting our needs met, and then we can start this whole other layer then, isn't it? Because then we've got to learn to communicate them better, and we need to model that for other people as well. And for me, one of the motivating factors was that I really wanted to model that for my children.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've sort of mentioned already, Heather, was around certainly our defense mode, around being fixers, pleasers, that I think if we have a tendency to do that if that's our sort of modus operandi, as it were, that we tend to expect that back, I think, as well. That's how I do things around here. We could say that's our own inner culture almost. That's how I do things around here. So the sense is, well, we would all be doing that surely, and we expect that back. So when that's not reciprocated, or it's not what we experience, I think we experience it even more intensely, because it is the way that we're behaving. So I think what can happen is we can become expert need knowers and need meters of other people. So I always think it's an interesting question, and I can remember realizing it in myself that I very much knew what Pete needed. I knew what my 3 children needed. I knew what many, many other people needed, or I thought I knew. I mean, that's, again, very presumptuous of me to declare and think I know what everyone needs. Because really, I realise now a lot of them were quite annoyed because I really wasn't necessarily meeting the need in the way they wanted. But that's probably another episode. I'm tending these days to get more annoyed with people who think they know what my needs are and are trying to meet them, and I'm actually know better. But I wonder how comfortable you are, or whether you even have this question in you if you're listening to this, about I need. So I realized, and I think you did too, Heather, that those words, or just those put together in that order, really didn't live in us. I didn't have that in me. Maybe I used to, I don't know, but I definitely didn't. And I wonder what our listeners' internal reactions are to those words, whether they live in you. So just being able to say inside of yourself, I need, and whether A, is that question there? And secondly, how easily do you find the clarity of an answer in there? And, that's been a journey for both of us to discover and be able to feel at home and inhabit that question, and then begin to have allow some answers and responses to that question to come up, and then to think about what we would do with those, because all of that was pretty scary. And I think the new realization I had ultimately was that others can really only meet your needs, or my needs, to the level that I know and that I value them myself, and that they know and value those needs for me, or that they're important to them. And you can't make someone do that. You can't make someone do that. But knowing and meeting our own needs, or knowing them and meeting them, models permission. It models that for your loved ones. And I realized it gave them some really big clues, actually, about your needs meeting, if they want to support you with that. Because I got much clearer and much more confident about communicating that. And I can remember, even just because I started buying myself, realizing what I prefer or what I like, and I was buying myself more of those things, and surrounding myself, I guess, with more of what I prefer, as an example. And the presents or gifts I did start getting, people felt more confident, I think, certainly in my family. None of us are particularly confident, actually no, one of us is, but not that confident around gift buying. And even that I think became a bit easier for them, because I can remember one time my son bought me a journal and said, well, I bought you a journal because I know you love journals. And I think that was because I'd been buying myself things, and even the cover of it was really beautiful. And I just think in meeting my own needs, it of itself communicated something to people, and equally was giving them permission to meet their needs, because I wasn't running around like a mad thing trying to do it. How about you? What have you noticed for yourself?
Such a big part of that, isn't it? Just understanding, I think it's taken a while and it's been difficult, but I've really had to find ways of meeting some of my social connection needs outside of the family. And, that's been a hard one to navigate, and to remove myself from running everything and just letting all of that go and trusting that they will be okay, and lots of difficulty around that, and I had to do that kind of slowly, and we did that together, actually, didn't we? A lot of support for each other in our group around that. But we do it slowly, and we take small steps so it feels manageable and it feels safe, and we're just challenging ourselves a little bit, and eventually it all feels a bit more manageable. And I think it's a lovely time to actually share. We've got a member, Love in Difference member, recently shared their experience of this, and I'd actually like to read this out, because I just think it really beautifully illustrates what we're trying to encourage our members with. And so their partner was diagnosed autistic, and a professional actually told them, this was our original myth part of it, wasn't it, that they would need to leave their partner because their partner couldn't meet their needs. And this member, found Love in Difference, and they've embraced some new perspective, and they've been traveling with us for some time. And this is what they shared with us after some of their travels with us. Firstly, I've discovered that it's positive, healthy, and empowering to meet my own needs rather than expecting my partner to do it all for me. What's more, I have discovered that there are loads of really simple things I can do to meet these needs. Giving myself permission to act on my needs and preferences is incredibly liberating. In the process, I've discovered that the judgmental stories I was telling myself about being self-indulgent for even having these needs were just plain wrong. Indeed, taking responsibility for my own happiness and well-being is not only fulfilling my well-being bucket, but also increasing my capacity to love and care for my partner. It is also relieving them of the pressure I was inadvertently putting them under. For example, I had no idea until quite recently just how much they used to mask with me to try and make me happy, and how harmful and exhausting this was for them. With less pressure, we are both freer to be ourselves, to be more open about our feelings, and to enjoy the times when we want to do things together. It's also teaching me to trust my judgment and to enjoy my own company, which is something I always used to avoid. And for me, this change in direction has provided tangible evidence that I can change things, and that I really don't have to leave my relationships to have my needs met. Every relationship is different, but I hope others who are in a similar position to the one I was in can find this evidence too. And that's just a beautiful, beautiful illustration, isn't it, of what we're hoping for some of our members, that they actually experience this empowerment, this liberation. She uses such beautiful words.
Amazing,
really amazing words. And nowadays, when it comes to meeting needs, we have really different beliefs, don't we? You and me, and we share this with our members. So we mentioned this in part one, but it's so important, we're going to reiterate it. So when it comes to needs meeting, we believe and live something that sounds like my needs are my responsibility. So my partner's needs are their responsibility. I will meet my partner's needs to the level of capacity, capability, and interest to do that. I will allow my partner to meet my needs to the level of their capacity, capability, and interest. And beyond that, it is my responsibility to meet my needs in a range of ways and with different people. I meet my partner's needs that I can from a giving and loving and unconditional place when I've taken responsibility for my needs first. And that giving from the unconditional place is so important, isn't it? And I know you're going to say more.
Yeah. And I guess, building on that then, I want what's best for me and what's best for them. And I'll work on knowing what's best for me, and I'll not assume that I know what's best for them. I'll support and meet my partner's needs, values, and aspirations to the level I can without betraying myself and my needs, values, and aspirations. And I'm okay with my partner supporting my needs, values, and aspirations to the level they can without betraying themselves and their needs, values, and aspirations. I mean, it really is a space to find step by step, isn't it? Particularly when we've been in the pickles that a lot of us have been. And where there are gaps and needs are unable to be met by me or them, and both Heather and I have been in those situations in our relationships, both with our partners and with children as well, and various other people. I'm committed to exploring those edges, we call them, those gaps and edges, with compassion and curiosity, even and if it takes me to a relationship edge. So this is a relationship with yourself and your loved ones that we're inviting you to discover. It's a different truth and a different way than we were told and encouraged into when we discovered how different we are in our relationship and our family, and how unhealthy our relationship dynamics had become. It takes time. You know, these myths and the narratives that created them go really deep. But change absolutely is possible, though, and we're here to support you every step by step of the way with that journey.
If this episode has resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching to get notifications of future episodes. To dive deeper into all of this with professional coaching, resources, and all the support you need, join us in Loving Difference via www.lovingdifference.net. And we'll be back here soon.